2 years' time, no matter how bad people's life circumstances are.
All I can say is God help the free world if Biden wins again. I mean, it's that serious. And I don't agree with you. I do think that Trump can win. And if he has a strategy, which he started to talk about, on how to deal with collecting unsolicited postal votes, then you can see a different outcome. His big mistake with the midterms was talking about, oh, wasn't it terrible we was robbed before, instead of having a strategy to get in those unsolicited postal votes. As you know, here, if you want a postal vote, you've got to apply. It comes to you one-to-one. When you issue them to everybody, you have your operatives, they go around, collect them all, fill the ballots out and dump them in at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, don't forget, when the Democrats had full control of the lower and upper house, they passed legislation which basically has now put in many of the provisions of the 2020 election into the future of all elections, which means don't bitch about it, fight, compete.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And I think he can win.
All right, what do you think?
Unfortunately, I'm agreeing with you. I think it's more likely going to be a Biden.
That's one for the trailer.
I know.
Unfortunately, I agree with you.
Well,
why don't you say, unfortunately, I agree with Stephen Conroy? It's unfortunately I agree with you, Paul.
I know. Well, I agree with Bronwyn that it is disastrous for the world to see another Biden presidency. But unfortunately, I do agree with you, Paul and Stephen.
God love you.
That it is more likely that Biden or the Democrats will be returned as opposed to the Republicans. And I think that's almost the defining line there.
That's
also,
a terrible assumption to make about the American people, that they're that stupid.
No, look, I love the American people. I absolutely do. But I just think in the swing states, I can't see Pennsylvania, which just elected that brain-dead dude, magically flipping back to Trump. I can't see where Whitmer just won in Wisconsin, then being able to flip that state back. I don't see the Lincoln Project disappearing in Arizona, which just re-elected Kelly. That's what I'm saying, that there's electoral math that goes into it.
And there's such a division within the Republicans themselves over pro-Trump and anti-Trump.
Anyway, let's talk about Australia.
I know, outrageous. There's factions in politics.
Let's talk about Australia.
Who's ever heard of that, Bronwyn?
Let's talk about Australia. Did Albo go in the wrong place today when he talked about the frontier wars, Bronwyn?
Yes.
Why?
Look, I think that what happened today is that not tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of people turned out for Anzac Day because they've been feeling that everything that they have held precious to them and want to pass on to their children and grandchildren was being attacked. And this was an opportunity where they could come forward and claim the cultural beliefs that they've got, the belief in the fact that Australia's a good country, that the people are good people, that these people laid down their lives that the rest of us can live the life we're living today. And that's why they turned out to say, this is what Anzac Day means. I don't think Albanese did himself any favours. I don't think people respect that sort of attitude. And I was talking to one Vietnam vet today who said, commenting on that, he said, in my platoon, I had 5 Aboriginal people in my platoon. We fought as one.
Bloody oath,
we fought as mates and we fought under one flag for one country. And that, to me, says it all.
Well, it was this thing where, again, Stephen, it was the way it was said as much as what was said. It's about the simultaneous inclusion when you see the campaigning from people like The Guardian, that today was a day to talk about frontier wars. It was seeing the defacing of a statue in Sydney today, something that would normally happen on Australia Day. And you can see that the attempt to push together the cultural issues in and around Australia Day that has effectively put it now on the back burner, where corporates won't sponsor it, local councils won't officially recognise it, and everyone's in a holding pattern until eventually the second term and a republic, and then we move the date and solve all the problems. Again, you can have a conversation about the frontier wars, you can recognise them in museums and places in Canberra, but I just think today is about people, black, white and brindle, who defended the nation state of Australia.
Look, I think you know, the conspiracies about the Republic, I mean, I think you're down a bit of a rabbit hole there, Paul. But on the speech today...
I'll meet you in 5 years.
The tone, the tone, that Albo put on the speech and the words. I mean, if it makes some people uncomfortable that Indigenous Australians fought and died for this country long before they were recognised as citizens, long before they were recognised with a minimum wage.
It's not true.
If that makes Bronwyn uncomfortable, well, I'm sorry, Bronwyn, but I'm not going to agree with you.
Aboriginal people had voting rights. They were citizens of this country long before 1967.
What was the 67 vote? What was the 1967 vote about?
Counting the people in the census. That's what it was about.
Really, that was it?
Don't confect it to be something else. It deleted from the Constitution the words that said that the Commonwealth could not make laws pertaining to Aboriginal people, although they could make laws pertaining to race. And the word race is in there because of the White Australia policy. And it's time it went. It's time it went. We are a single people. We are one people. And what we're seeing from your Prime Minister, Mr Albanese, is the fact that he is dividing this nation in a way we have not seen in this country for decades. Stephen, and it's appalling.
Yeah, I mean, my point is, again, no problem with the recognition of fact, no problem with the recognition of uncomfortable truths. But the conversation about the frontier wars, which is all part of what is connected to all of this, again, do you believe that the frontier wars is something that Anzac Day should start to reflect, or do we have the capacity to do that on another day?
No, I've always liked your suggestions over the Australia Day debate and this debate that it is possible to recognise and honour.
Absolutely. 25th and 26th.
So I'm very comfortable with that argument. But also, if Albo wants to raise an issue and make the point in, I think, a very modest and balanced way that he did today, I think the sort of conspiracy theories that Bronwyn wants to toss into it all
There's no conspiracy
really should
theory.
Just be...
He just did himself no good.
It's just like...
All right. What about what I was saying before, Hollie, when I was talking about, you know, again, I know the reaction. I know what happens. Let's all strap ourselves in and get ready for it. The people who today is a boozer, today is a fistful of 50s, 2-up day. Today is shoeies and all the rest of it, right? I'm a card-carrying bogan, and today is not a bogan day.
Look, I was very uncomfortable when I saw that photo of the woman doing a shoey. I mean, I was uncomfortable just generally, but in particular occurring today. It was lovely walking around near where I live and seeing so many men and women in their uniform having a drink at the pub. And that, to me, is what Anzac Day is about. And it is those people that go to the dawn service. And, I know those days, and I know Bronwyn's done them, where you go to multiple services and you see the same servicemen at the different services, but they've ducked off to the pub in between. And I think that's such a wonderful part of the day. I'm going to admit something here. I've actually never played 2-up. I don't understand it. I don't know how it works. I'm not,
It's a fun game. I just don't think it should be played in the biggest 2-up game in the Southern Hemisphere world.
Yeah, I don't understand it.
There are all sorts of small games of 2-up around the place too.
Yeah.
Which again, again, maybe Stephen, I'm just sort of the non-drinking wowser here who doesn't quite understand that. The first half of the day is stand in silence, and the second half of the day is let it rip. But it feels like to me there's a lot of let it rip that's getting in there now, where basically it's half of the news package is about what happened today, which is, we stood there somberly in the morning, and then now here's the fun bit.
Look, I'm not a fan of shoey when Daniel Ricciardo started it at the Formula One. It's not my sort of cup of tea. But the younger generation think it's, hilarious. They think it's fun. They think it's a celebration. I think back to that period in the early 90s when the news reports on Anzac Day were about the lack of attendance, the dropping attendance, and there was a genuine discussion taking place about whether or not we should stop doing Anzac Day or move it to another day. But, to the credit of Mick Malthouse and Kevin Sheedy, they came up with an idea which has become an iconic moment. It's spread through all sports, and the afternoon has now become a celebration of, the service given. And if people want to celebrate in different ways at Paul, I frankly agree with you. The shoey is just not my way of celebrating anything. But if that's what brings people together and gets them out going, oh, it's Anzac Day, oh, we're off to do this thing. You know, even if it's irreverently celebrating it.
But then, Bronwyn, what about this bloke, again, from the ABC? And I get it, I'm giving him what he wants, which is, you know, the evil Sky News recognition. And we get the feedback loop and Media Watch whacks us because I get it, all right? I get it. It's boring, but we all know what's about to happen here. Are there other more respectful ways of commemorating without getting bugle fatigue? Tell us bugle fatigue.
This is somebody just trying to be clever. Look, I've got to say in the last few days, I've been to 6 Anzac Day services. I went to 3 today. I've been up since 3:30 this morning.
Good on you.
And I can only say that I saw, in the middle of the day today, we had the local primary school band players. We marched down the street and had a lunch with speeches. The community were around watching and applauding. We had 2 kids play their trumpets to play the last post in Ravelli. There was no bugle fatigue there. Here were 2 young kids who were making errors but giving their heart.
Yeah.
And the people just applauded and said thank you.
I wish somebody could come up with a description for that feeling of anxiety we all have, whoever is bugling, going, come on, mate, you can do it. You can get there. Hold on, you can get there. Because I can't imagine a more nerve-wracking thing to do.
These are little kids.
It's beautiful.
And it was beautiful. And the band played the national anthem and they played for us to sing. And it was not perfect playing. It was
but
but it was their heart and it was part of our community. Later in the day, they had a 2-up game, but I had to get on to the next one. And the last one I went to was a magnificent service at Conroy on the beach, where the parade is on the beach, and where the surf lifesavers, this time the girls rowing crew who came 3rd in the national titles, They took a wreath out, and the surf was pretty rough today, and they rowed right out past the first line. And then, when the last post paid, they raised their oars.
That's cool.
As they'd had cast the wreath into the sea. And when Ravelli was played, they put them down and came back in. Now, that's just something that gives such an emotion for the community. There was nobody getting drunk or being stupid or whatever.
Sure.
These were just a whole lot of people, kids playing on the sand, people watching and applauding.
Yeah. Well, I've got to say, the surf clubs in particular...
That's what it's about. They're hanging on to it.
Yeah, I've got to shout out to Billy's Surf Club as well, Bugola, in Sydney, where my mate Steve has come up with a wonderful way of commemorating, I keep saying celebrate, commemorating Anzac Day. It's a lovely little service, and hopefully we'll get a chance to show it to you on telly